After destroying the cursed school yearbook at the end of Part 1, Kaito and Anri believed everything was finally over. But the moment Mika's face vanished from the page, something far more terrifying began. The yearbook started forming a new image, with their faces. The curse no longer needed victims, it needed replacements. And to survive, they would have to confront the one thing the curse hated most. The memory of the people it erased. Chapter 1. The New Face. The school bell echoed across the courtyard on the first day of the new semester. Seimei High was lively again, crowded with laughter and greetings, as if no one had ever vanished from this place. Students took pictures for the yearbook, posted them online, and joked around just like any other normal school year. And that was exactly what terrified Kaito the most. Because he was the only one who remembered that some people had once existed and then faded out of the world completely. Mika no longer had a seat, no record in the system, no memory in anyone's mind, yet for Kaito, every leaf falling on the schoolyard reminded him that she had once walked here, once laughed here. He had to act normal, otherwise people would think he was unstable. But inside, the anxiety gnawed at him like a wound that refused to close. His eyes wandered toward the corridor leading to the memorial room. The 1998 yearbook was no longer there, but the curse it left behind still clung to him like a shadow. A voice from the school announcement system called out the new class lists. Kaito went to see which class he was assigned to, and then his heart froze. Class 12C, Anri Hayes. That name, he had seen it before in the cursed yearbook, written in blood-red letters. Next chosen, Anri. Kaito scanned the crowd anxiously. It didn't take long to recognize her, a girl with shoulder-length hair, headphones around her neck, bright eyes full of youthful energy. Nothing strange about her, nothing cursed, she looked full of life. And that hurt more than anything, because Kaito knew what awaited her. Anri caught him staring and smiled kindly. Kaito flinched and turned away immediately. To others, it was a casual greeting. To him, it was a nightmare. The yearbook had chosen her. In their first homeroom period, when the teacher introduced the new student, everyone turned toward Anri. She stood up, introduced herself, talked about her hobbies, and sat back down, but Kaito noticed only one thing. She sat in the exact same seat Mika had occupied the year before. No one noticed the coincidence. No one remembered the girl who once sat there. Kaito's chest tightened. The curse hadn't stopped, it was replacing Mika with Anri not only in the yearbook, but in the world itself. And the worst part was, it wasn't random. After class, the info sheet for new students fell from the bulletin board. Kaito picked it up, and froze. Anri's photo was properly attached, but underneath the paper was a faint outline of older tape. It looked like another student's profile used to be there, one that had been removed. A student named Mika Suzuhara. Someone had been erased, so that Anri could appear. Kaito understood in an instant, the curse hadn't stopped. It wasn't satisfied with taking Mika. It had simply replaced her. Anri wasn't chosen because of fate. She was chosen because the curse needed someone to occupy Mika's empty space in this world. And if Anri vanished, the next person on the list would be Kaito. A shiver of realization hit him. The yearbook didn't just take victims. It replaced them. Kaito clenched his fists, heart pounding painfully. Before it was too late, before Anri smiled like Mika once did, before she disappeared from the world, he had to do something. Even if it meant confronting the curse himself. Chapter 2. The invitation that couldn't be refused. During recess that day, Kaito tried to avoid looking at Anri, to act as if nothing was wrong. But the more he tried to ignore her, the more he felt her presence. She blended in so quickly, laughing with classmates, asking questions, joining the group chat. Everyone saw her as friendly and warm, the kind of person who made others feel welcome. Just like Mika had been. By the end of the day, when the orange twilight covered the school corridors, Kaito was getting ready to go home when he froze. Anri was standing in front of the memorial room. She didn't go in, only stared at the door with a strange curiosity, as if something was calling her from the inside. Kaito rushed forward and grabbed her arm with more force than he intended. "Don't go there." Anri flinched in surprise. startled by his intensity. Then she composed herself and smiled softly, trying to ease the tension. "Sorry, I just thought the room looked interesting. I like learning about a school's history." Kaito felt a chill crawl down his spine. Those were the exact same words Mika had said on the day she disappeared. He didn't sleep that night. Every breath felt like sandpaper in his lungs. Anri had to be saved. There was no room for hesitation anymore. Just as Kaito tried to study to distract himself, his phone vibrated. A new email. Sender: unknown. Address: none. Kaito hesitated, but opened it. Greater than, if you want to save Mika, come to school at 7:30 p.m. No attachments, no signature. But the time, 7:30 p.m., was the exact moment Mika vanished. The exact time her last recorded appearance was seen on the security camera. This could be a trap. Or it could be the only chance. 7:12 p.m. Kaito grabbed his jacket and ran. The school grounds in the darkness looked like a different world. The breeze shaking the trees sounded like whispers echoing across the courtyard. The lights inside the building were dim, flickering weakly. He walked straight toward the memorial room. 7:29 p.m. Kaito's hand trembled on the door handle. But he pushed forward, because there was no turning back. 7:30 p.m. The door closed behind him by itself. The room was empty, or rather, no one visible was inside. Only a warm yellow light, dust floating in silence, and the heavy dread of something unseen watching. On the glass display in the center of the room, the yearbook from 1998 lay open. It had been locked away. Kaito had seen it with his own eyes. Someone, or something, had placed it here. He stepped toward it. Every instinct screamed for him to run. But he couldn't. Mika deserved more than fear. He looked at the picture, the smiling students of the 1998 graduating class. Shun and Aya standing close. The others smiling serenely. And at the center, Mika. For the first time since she had been trapped in the picture. She was not smiling. Her face was calm but filled with determination. She did not look like someone defeated. She looked like someone fighting. Then, her finger moved. Slowly. She lifted her hand in the photograph and pressed it against the border of the page. Using all her strength, she traced words into the yearbook. "Don't let anyone be replaced again." Kaito stared, breath shattered. "Mika, I'll save you, I swear." But the letters in the yearbook began to distort, changing into a harsher, sharper message. Greater than "don't let anyone else die." A sudden gust of wind slammed across the room though the windows were shut. The lights flickered violently, then went out. The darkness swallowed everything. Only the photograph still glowed. In that moment, Kaito understood. The email hadn't come from the curse. It had come from Mika. She hadn't summoned him to rescue her. She had summoned him to stop the tragedy from repeating again. Because Mika didn't want to return if it meant someone else would disappear in her place. Kaito clenched his fist, heart-burning. Because now he knew. The curse wasn't over. It had already chosen the next victim. And Mika was begging him, warning him, not to let the cycle continue. Chapter 3. The One Who Survived. The truth Kaito discovered in the archive room haunted him all day like a shadow whispering constantly in his ears. 2 students vanished in 1998, and only one person survived. If he could find that survivor, maybe he could understand how to break the curse, or at least understand why she was spared. Kaito sneaked into the administration office to locate the parents' records. Based on the only remaining name from the 1998 photograph, Araki Nobu, he found an address linked to a dormitory in a town nearly 3 hours away. He didn't hesitate. After school, he boarded the fastest train. The scenery outside rushed by like a blur. But Kaito's thoughts moved even faster, all circling one question. Greater than, why was she the one who lived? By the time he arrived, the sky was darkening. The dormitory stood in a quiet residential area, so peaceful it felt detached from reality. Kaito rang the bell. After a long silence, the door opened just a crack. A woman in her 30s appeared, pale, tired, haircut short, But the fear buried deep inside her eyes told Kaito immediately. She remembered everything, and it had never stopped hurting. You're from Seimei High, aren't you? Kaito froze. She didn't ask his name, didn't ask what he wanted. She already knew. Araki opened the door wider, silently inviting him in, as if she had been waiting 26 years for someone to come. The apartment was neat but lifeless, no family pictures, no decorations, no graduation photos. It was as if she had erased every reminder of people. Kaito sat across from her and didn't waste time. In 1998, 2 students disappeared. Why were you the only one who survived? Araki's hands trembled around her cup. It took her a long time to answer. Because they chose each other. The words struck him like a punch. She continued, eyes unfocused as memories dragged her back into the past. Greater than, the yearbook chose me and Yui, my best friend. The whole class was terrified. No one dared come near us. But 2 people, the bravest in the class, stood up and replaced us. Kaito's heart twisted painfully. Greater than, when 2 people stepped into the photograph. The curse closed. Nobody else disappeared. Everyone else lived, except me. Kaito frowned. What do you mean, except you? Araki laughed weakly, a humorless sound sharpened by years of guilt. Because I'm the only one who still remembered them. The world forgot the 2 who vanished, but I didn't. And because I remembered, I was the one who lived instead of them. She tapped her temple, voice cracking. Greater than, the curse didn't end because I survived. It ended because someone kept the memory of the victims alive. The room felt colder. Kaito recalled the words Mika wrote in the yearbook. Don't let anyone else die. Saving Mika by replacing her would only repeat the tragedy of 1998, not stop the curse. Only transfer the burden. Araki looked straight into his eyes, not with anger, but with fear and compassion. You came to find me because you're one of the chosen this year. Right? Because you want to save someone else. Kaito's voice broke. Anri. Araki shook her head slowly, not in denial, but in heartbreak. Don't let anyone replace anyone. If 2 people enter the photograph, the curse will end, but the world will lose all memory of them forever. Her voice trembled. That's the truth no one else in the world understands. And the truth that forced me to live alone for 26 years. Kaito clenched his fists. If he let others sacrifice themselves, the curse would end, but they would be erased forever. And if nobody stepped in, the curse could consume the entire school. There was no right choice. Before Kaito left, Araki whispered, soft but sharp as a blade. You can't defeat this curse with sacrifice. To break it, you must make it impossible for the curse to choose anyone ever again. Kaito didn't completely understand, but his heart knew this was the only clue he had. As he walked back toward the station, night wind howled against his skin. His phone suddenly buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Greater than, you can't protect her forever. Attached was a blurry photo of the school hallway at night, completely empty, except for the faint reflection of Anri standing alone, as if waiting for someone. Kaito stopped breathing. The curse knew he was fighting it. And now, it was fighting back. Chapter 4. The photograph that shouldn't exist. The train ride back to Seimei felt longer than the journey out. Even though the wheels clattered faster than before, the wind outside scraped against the windows like fingernails dragging across glass. Kaito couldn't stop replaying Araki's words. Greater than, the curse didn't end because I survived. It ended because someone remembered the ones who vanished. If that was true, then Mika had refused to return, because she didn't want another person to disappear in her place. The world could remember only one, not all 3. By the time the train arrived, night had swallowed the sky. Kaito walked the silent road toward school, driven by fear and urgency more than logic. The campus was dark except for a faint glow seeping from the corridor near Class 12C. A classroom light, left on after hours. He ran. Through the window, he saw something that froze his blood. On the wall, pinned neatly above the chalkboard, was a new class photo taken that very morning, but it wasn't the version he saw before. In this version, Kaito stood in the center. Anri stood directly beside him. But everyone else in the class, Every single student was blurred, their faces smoothed out like erased memories. Kaito stumbled backward. The curse wasn't slowly targeting Anri alone. It was accelerating, rearranging the world so that Kaito and Anri would become the pair destined to replace the next victims. All others were fading in the photograph first, so that when the time came, the world would already be shaped around the two of them. Someone, or something, wanted to trap them together. Kaito slammed the door open and ripped the photo off the wall. His pulse hammered in his ears. He ran his fingers through the blurred faces, but the more he pressed, the more the image distorted, pushing back, refusing to be undone. He dropped into a chair, shaking. If the curse was rearranging the present to pave the way for the future, then saving Anri alone would not be enough. The sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. Kaito tensed. Anri stood in the doorway, backpack on her shoulder, eyes wide in confusion. "What are you doing here? Why are you tearing down the class photo?" Kaito hid the chilling details, it would only terrify her. "I thought you'd gone home," he said instead. She stepped inside, setting her bag down. "I forgot my headphones, and I saw the lights on. I didn't want to leave alone, so I came to check." Kaito's heart tightened. She had come just because she didn't want him to be alone. That was exactly why the curse targeted her. He tried to calm his voice. "Anri, listen, if anything strange ever happens, anything at all, you have to tell me." Anri tilted her head, confused. "Did something happen to you?" Kaito hesitated. The truth would only put her at risk, but lying would isolate her. Before he could answer, Anri walked to the chalkboard and froze. Why am I standing next to you in the photo?" Kaito's lips trembled. She had seen it. Anri studied the picture closer. This isn't right. It doesn't look like a normal class photo. Everyone looks blurred except us. It's like we're the center." Kaito swallowed painfully. "I think it's trying to choose us." Anri's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Before Kaito could speak, she took a shaky step backward, bumping into a desk. "Kaito, please tell me you're not saying what I think you're saying." He couldn't say it, so he simply didn't look away. Silence answered for him. Anri covered her mouth, tears forming, not out of fear for herself, but because she finally understood something. Kaito wasn't trying to save Mika for selfish reasons. He was trying to prevent someone else, anyone else, from being sacrificed. And now, he was trying to protect her. Anri whispered, "So, I'm next." Kaito grabbed her shoulders. "No, you are not next. I won't let that happen. You can't stop the curse alone," she cried. "I don't have to," he replied. The classroom lights flickered. Both of them froze. When the lights steadied, the class photo in Kaito's hand had changed. No blur. No other students. Only two figures remained. Kaito and Anri, smiling. And the timestamp at the bottom read, "Greater than 7:30 p.m. tonight." Kaito's hands went ice cold. The curse wasn't waiting. It had already chosen the time. Tonight, Chapter 5, The Time of Fate. 7 p.m. The school was closed, locked, and silent. Students had long gone home. But Kaito and Anri stayed behind, hidden in the gym storage room. Lights off, barely daring to breathe. Time did not feel real anymore. Every minute was a countdown to 7:30. Kaito kept checking the class photo, but the timestamp had stopped changing. It stayed frozen on 7:30 p.m. tonight, as if the curse itself had engraved it. "We still have time," Kaito whispered. "We're not trapped yet, if we can avoid being in the same place when 7:30 hits." "No." Anri cut him off. She wasn't panicking, she wasn't crying, she looked calm, too calm. "The curse doesn't rely on where we stand. It relies on whether we are chosen. Even if we run to opposite ends of the city, it will still come for us." Kaito hated the truth in her voice. He wanted to scream, break something, destroy the yearbook, anything. But he had seen what happened to Mika when the curse consumed her. He couldn't risk the same happening to Anri. "We need to find a weakness," he said desperately. Anri placed a hand over his. "Listen, you're not alone. We'll fight this together." Kaito shook his head violently. You don't understand. That's exactly what it wants. To make us bonded. To make us irreplaceable to each other. So the moment it takes one of us. He stopped. He couldn't even force himself to say it. Anri lowered her gaze. So what do you want me to do? Pretend I don't care about you? Pretend I don't worry? That I don't want to stay alive either? Kaito had no answer. A painful silence swallowed the room. 7:12 p.m. The fluorescent light flickered on overhead. But neither of them had touched the switch. Kaito felt his spine tighten. The curse was moving closer. We should leave, he whispered. They ran out into the corridor. The hallways were completely dark except for the emergency exit signs glowing faint green, eerie and distant. Their footsteps echoed sharply, like the school itself was listening. 7:17 p.m. They reached the main entrance. Kaito pulled the heavy doors, locked tight. Every side exit, locked. Emergency doors, locked. Not just locked, sealed. As if the metal had melted together. The curse didn't want them to run anymore. It wanted them to stay. 7:21 p.m. They retreated to the central courtyard. The fountain was dry, leaves scattered around its base. Above them, the windows of every classroom were pitch black, except for one. Class 12C. The lights were on. The silhouettes of desks and chairs were visible. And on the chalkboard was something written in big red letters, large enough to see from below. Greater than come. Anri squeezed Kaito's hand, not out of fear, but decision. It's calling us, but we don't have to obey. Kaito forced a breath. No matter what happens, don't step inside that classroom. That's where it seals everything. Anri nodded. She trusted him. 7:26 p.m. Kaito's phone vibrated, a new message from an unknown number. Greater than, you can save her if you accept. Attached was a picture of the classroom taken from inside. In the center of the room was a camera on a tripod, pointed at the student's spot where Kaito and Anri always stood during class. 2 name cards lay under it. Kaito. Anri. Kaito remembered Araki's words. Greater than, 2 students replaced us. That's how the curse ended. A sacrifice. A pair. 1 for each vanished student. If Kaito and Anri walked into that classroom at 7:30, the curse would end, for everyone else. But they would be erased forever. No memory. No trace. Not even a name. 7:28 p.m. The air changed, cold and sharp. Like a storm about to burst. The clock tower chimed once. 2 minutes left. Kaito. Anri's voice was steady, even though tears glimmered in her eyes. If going in together saves the school, I'll do it. No. Kaito stepped back as if struck. No, I won't let you sacrifice yourself. I won't lose you. You won't lose me. We'll go together. That's worse. Anri froze. His response had cut deeper than she expected. Kaito grabbed her shoulders, voice cracking. If I lose you, I'll still remember you. But if you lose me, you'll be alone. You'll live with that for the rest of your life. I won't let you carry that pain. The hand of the clock reached 7:29. Anri looked into his eyes, the honesty, the fear, the love, the refusal to choose between 2 tragedies. Kaito, you can't save me by going first. And you can't save me by letting me go. Her voice broke. You can only save me if both of us survive. 7 hours 29 minutes and 40 seconds. The light in the classroom flickered violently. 7 hours 29 minutes and 50 seconds. The windows rattled like teeth chattering. 7 hours 29 minutes and 55 seconds. The whole school seemed to lean toward the classroom, as if gravity itself was pushing them there. 7 hours 29 minutes and 58 seconds. Kaito and Anri held onto each other, not to be taken, but to stay grounded. 7 hours 29 minutes and 59 seconds. The world turned silent. 7:30 p.m. The curse struck. Chapter 6. The lens that sees everything. When the clock struck 7:30 p.m., the world didn't explode. It didn't shake. It didn't scream. Instead, everything went silent. The air froze. The wind stopped. The distant sound of trains, traffic, and city life disappeared. Kaito and Anri stood motionless in the courtyard, gripping each other's hands, not because they were being pulled, but because they were the only two things still allowed to move. The rest of the world felt like a paused photograph. And then they saw it. A faint white glow flickered in the hallway of the school building. The lights turned on one by one, illuminating the path upward, leading directly to Class 12C, like runway lights guiding a doomed plane. But the glow didn't come from the lights. It came from the camera. It floated across the hallway like a living thing, the lens turning left and right, searching, hunting. It wasn't walking on legs. It wasn't pushed by wind. It simply hovered, drawn toward the courtyard like a predator sensing breath. Kaito yanked Anri behind the fountain. The glowing camera moved slowly into the open, its lens turning, scanning the courtyard like an eye searching for the chosen pair. A low mechanical clicking echoed with every movement. Click, click, click. Kaito's blood chilled. The camera wasn't trying to take photos, it was trying to identify faces. If it captured both of them, they would become its next pair. Anri whispered through trembling breath, "It's alive." Kaito shook his head. "No, it's worse. It's the curse's way of seeing." They watched in horror as the camera rotated, light intensifying every time it detected motion. It scanned doors, benches, the sky, anything that could contain a silhouette. And then, it turned toward the fountain. Kaito pressed Anri's head down just in time. The camera's beam swept past the exact spot where they were hiding. The ground beneath them vibrated gently, not like fear, but like a warning. If the camera caught even 1 second of their faces together, the curse would snap shut. Kaito's mind raced. They couldn't outrun it. They couldn't attack it. They couldn't destroy it. Mika had tried and failed. So the only option left was to deny it what it was looking for. Kaito leaned into Anri's ear, whispering, "No matter what happens, do not look directly into the lens." Anri nodded, terrified but resolute. The camera floated closer. Too close. Its glow washed around the fountain, crawling like fog. It paused, sensing something. Then, in an instant, it shot upward, hovering above the courtyard for a wider view. This time, the entire yard lit up. There was no place to hide. Kaito grabbed Anri's hand. "We run. Don't let it see our faces, don't look back." They sprinted toward the west wing of the school. The camera spun violently in midair, shrieking in a metallic screech, and the hunt began. The hallways warped into a maze of flickering lights and echoing footsteps. The camera smashed through the windows to follow them, traveling through the air like a bullet made of light. Kaito pulled Anri into the science lab and shut the door, but instead of trying to open it, the camera scanned the room through the tiny glass panel on the door. They crouched behind a desk. The camera scanned the room's faces, or rather, searched for the outlines of two people together. It wasn't trying to pick victims. It was trying to confirm them. Anri whispered, "If it doesn't find us together, it can't activate." Kaito finished. The camera hovered away, but instead of leaving, it projected a soft glow across the hallway wall. A blurred photograph slowly appeared on the surface, a live feed from security footage. And in that footage, was Kaito and Anri, running together through the courtyard just moments ago. Anri covered her mouth in terror. The curse didn't need to see them now. It already had enough of their past movements. The camera began printing the distorted image of their faces onto the footage, fixing them as the chosen pair. No, Kaito lunged for the hallway. He slammed the hallway light switch off. Darkness swallowed the corridor, cutting the camera's feed. The projection vanished, interrupted, incomplete. Kaito gasped in relief. The camera flickered violently, trembling as though enraged. Then, it began replaying a different recording. A moment from earlier that afternoon. A moment Kaito wished he could erase. Anri had returned to the classroom to retrieve her headphones. Kaito had followed her. They had talked, closely, smiling. The camera projected that moment onto the lockers. The footage sharpened. The smiles sharpened. Their outlines sharpened. Anri's face turned ghost white. "Kaito, it's using our memories against us." Kaito punched the wall, helpless. The curse didn't rely on the present. It relied on all moments in which two people cared about each other. The camera floated directly toward the science lab door. They could hear the metal vibrating. This time, it wasn't trying to identify them. It was coming to take them. Kaito dragged Anri toward the emergency stairwell, the only exit not yet sealed. They slammed through the door and tumbled down the steps. Behind them, the door exploded open. The camera flew down the stairwell in pursuit. Click, 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 click. The clicking got faster, like a heartbeat speeding toward climax. Kaito and Anri burst into the basement, the old archive storage room. Rows of dusty boxes, broken trophies, and forgotten school projects surrounded them. And in the center of the room, a giant class photograph of 1998 lay smashed on the floor. It had been destroyed. But Mika's face, even in the broken glass, still looked forward with fierce determination. The camera screeched at the sight of the destroyed photograph, as if offended. The light inside its lens grew blood red. That was when Kaito finally understood. It didn't hunt them because they were afraid. It hunted them because they cared. Fear didn't fuel the curse. Attachment did. The camera lunged toward them like a beast. Kaito shielded Anri and screamed, "We won't let you take us." The camera froze, mid-air, trembling. Anri grabbed Kaito's hand tighter, eyes blazing. "We'll break the curse, and we'll do it together." The glow inside the lens began to crack, like glass shattering under invisible pressure. For the first time, the curse hesitated. Chapter 7. The Sacrifice That Never Worked. The camera hung in midair, trembling violently, its glow flickering between white and red, as if the curse itself was unsure of what to do next. For the first time, it wasn't hunting, it was hesitating. Kaito and Anri stayed pressed against each other, backs against the wall, holding their ground as though the slightest doubt might doom them. Anri whispered, voice shaking but steady, "It doesn't understand what to do. It's never had to deal with someone fighting back with this." She didn't say the word love, but both of them felt it hanging in the air like electricity. The camera emitted a sound, not a screech, not a whir, but something painfully close to a cry. And then, suddenly, the red glow snapped back to white, and the hallway lights surged to life upstairs. Kaito held his breath. It's calling for help. Footsteps echoed across the school, not heavy, not living. Footsteps that didn't belong to people. Kaito grabbed Anri's wrist and dragged her deeper into the archive room. Behind stacks of dusty boxes, they crouched in darkness while the footsteps grew louder, and then stopped right outside the door. The temperature dropped. The doorknob twisted. The door creaked open. Someone stepped inside. A man, tall, thin, wearing a school uniform from an era long gone. His face was blurred, details smeared as if he had never been allowed to exist properly. Behind him, another student stepped in, and another, both also blurred, their shapes collapsing into shadows around the edges. Kaito recognized them instantly, not individually, but instinctively. They were the victims of the curse, students from past decades. The curse had summoned them, not to attack, but to prove a point. That sacrifice had always been the way. One of the faded boys stepped forward, forcing words out of a throat that barely existed. "Greater than, 2 for us, we go free." Another. "Greater than, let us take your places." Their voices were not pleading. They were desperate. Anri clutched her chest, horrified. They're not monsters, they're asking to escape. Kaito shook his head fiercely. That's not freedom, that's replacement. It just keeps the curse alive. More ghostly figures stepped inside, filling the room. Their presence warped the air around them. Like static scattered memories. They weren't evil. They were trapped, and terrified of being forgotten. The camera floated behind them, as if waiting for the past to convince the present. Kaito forced himself upright and shouted, "Sacrifice doesn't save anyone. It only lets the curse continue." The spirits shook violently, as if his words physically hurt them. They pressed their hands over their blurred faces as if trying to hold themselves together. A girl among them whispered, "Greater than, if no one replaces us, we vanish forever." Her voice cracked with unbearable fear. Anri stepped forward, tears streaming. "You won't vanish. You'll be remembered." Kaito stared at her, shocked, because he suddenly understood. It wasn't sacrifice that freed Araki. It was memory. Araki remembered Shun and Aya. She carried them in her heart. That was why she survived, and why the curse ended that year. The spirits shook harder, as if the idea itself was impossible. The girl whispered again. "Greater than, no one remembers us. Not even ourselves." The words hit like a knife. Because it was true. Their faces were blurred not because the world forgot them, but because they forgot themselves first. Anri wiped her tears, voice trembling but firm. "Then we'll remember you. All of you." Silence swept the room. The camera shrieked, a raw, desperate sound, and surged forward to block Anri from reaching the spirits. It didn't want memory. It wanted replacement. Because if the forgotten were remembered, the curse would have no power at all. Kaito stepped between Anri and the camera. His voice shook with rage and grief. "You don't get to decide who deserves to exist." Anri took a deep breath and whispered, not to the curse, but to the spirits. "Tell us your names." The room shuddered violently. Some spirits wailed. Some collapsed to their knees, clutching their blurred faces as if trying to remember. The camera roared. The lights shattered, the floor shook. It wasn't just resisting, it was panicking. Kaito shouted through the chaos, "Don't be afraid. If you say your names, you won't disappear, you'll be free." The spirits screamed, a mix of pain and longing, fighting to remember themselves. One boy fell forward, pushing out the first broken syllable of his name. And then, a glowing crack split down the camera's lens, a fracture of pure light. The curse was weakening. But the spirits needed more than a single boy. They all had to remember, fully, together. Before any of them could speak again. The camera, shaking uncontrollably, released a blinding flash of pure white light. Kaito grabbed Anri and shielded her, but the world dissolved into white. The basement, the spirits, the camera, everything vanished. And then, a familiar, trembling voice spoke from the void. "Greater than, don't give up." Mika, Chapter 8. Mika's voice from beyond. When the blinding white light faded, Kaito found himself lying on the floor of the old archive room again. Dust floated slowly in the air. The boxes and shelves were back in their places, as if nothing had happened. But the camera was gone. The spirits were gone. And the voice that cut through the void, echoed inside him like a trembling heartbeat. "Mika." Anri was beside him, sitting up with wide eyes, clinging to consciousness. She whispered, "You heard it too, right?" Kaito nodded. His voice was barely more than breath. "She's still fighting." He didn't mean alive. He didn't mean here. He meant something deeper and more painful. Mika was still resisting the curse from the inside. Anri glanced around the room. Nothing moved, no glow, no spirits. It looked almost normal. But both of them knew that was a lie. Everything had reset because the curse was changing tactics. The basement door creaked open by itself. Kaito and Anri froze. Someone stood in the doorway, a shadow at first, then unmistakably human. A familiar uniform. A familiar build. A familiar hesitation in posture. Nishida-sensei. But he didn't look like the lifeless ghost they had seen in the past. He had weight in his footsteps now. Breathing, a pulse. Still, something in his eyes remained broken. "You shouldn't have come here," he said quietly. Kaito stood up, anger bubbling. You knew all along what the curse wanted." Nishida didn't deny it. "I didn't want anyone else to vanish. But I didn't know how to stop it." "Lies," Kaito shouted. "For 26 years, you watched students disappear, and you did nothing." Anri grabbed his arm, not to stop him, but to steady him. Nishida lowered his gaze. "The first time it happened, I tried to destroy the camera. I tried to burn the yearbook. I tried to smash the photograph. Nothing worked. And when I fought back, the curse targeted the students even faster. The only way to slow it down was to hide everything and make sure history repeated the same way, with 2 sacrifices." His voice cracked, decades of guilt spilling out. You think I didn't scream? You think I didn't try to take their place myself? It never accepted me. It needed students. It needed youth, hope, attachment. Kaito's fists trembled so hard his nails cut into his palms. You let them die. Nishida nodded. And I paid for it. The world forgot me. I became a ghost who existed only inside this school. I couldn't leave. I couldn't grow old. I couldn't die. I was forced to watch. Anri stepped closer, voice soft but unyielding. You know how to end it, don't you? Truly end it. Nishida froze. Kaito demanded, tell us. The teacher backed away, terrified, shaking violently, as if the truth itself could kill him. His voice dropped to a whisper, terrified and fragile. If you stop the sacrifice, the curse will not disappear. It will evolve. It will look for a new way. Anri swallowed. And if the sacrifice continues? Then the curse lives forever. Nishida's hands shook like shattered glass barely held together. The curse doesn't want death. It wants replacement, the cycle of memory being erased and rewritten. That is how it feeds itself. If you break the formula, it will become something worse. Kaito clenched his jaw. Worse than dying? Yes, Nishida whispered. Being alive, but forgotten by the world and by yourself. That was the fate the spirits in the archives had suffered. Kaito shook his head fiercely. I'm not accepting that. There has to be another way. Before Nishida could respond, the overhead lights flickered, then died. A single photograph fluttered from the ceiling and landed between them. It wasn't 1998. It wasn't 2026. It was a photograph of the future, one that shouldn't exist. In it, there were no students. No school building. Only a torn, empty landscape, and in the center, a camera lying in the dirt like a corpse. The message under the photo was scrawled in silver ink. Greater than, the curse ends only when memory stays, without blood. The temperature dropped. Anri touched the photograph, and gasped. Her eyes widened as she felt a surge of memory that wasn't hers. A girl laughing in a music room in 2011. A boy eating lunch alone in 2003. A senior crying before graduation in 1995. Memories of students who had vanished. Their lives. Their dreams. Their stories. They were inside her now. Anri fell to her knees, holding her head in agony. Kaito rushed to her, but Nishida held him back. She's not dying. She's remembering. Anri whispered through clenched teeth. They're not angry, they're begging not to be erased. Kaito held her tightly as tears poured down her face. She wasn't being consumed. She was becoming the keeper of their memories. Nishida stared at her with something like awe and horror. She might be able to do what no one else ever could. What? Kaito demanded. To remember everyone. To remember every life the curse ever took. Kaito froze as the meaning hit him like thunder. If someone remembered all the forgotten, the curse would lose power. Because memory, not death, had always been its food. Mika hadn't asked Kaito to save her. She had asked him to break the cycle. And now, Anri, not by fate, but by her own will, had taken the curse's hatred and turned it into memory. The voices inside her grew quiet, not gone, but no longer screaming. Anri looked up at Kaito. Exhausted, vulnerable, but certain. We don't need a sacrifice. She whispered. We need to remember. Nishida staggered backward, hands over his face, shaking as if the weight of his sins were finally visible. No one could carry that burden, no one could hold that many lives. Anri squeezed Kaito's hand, weak but steady. I can. At that moment, a faint warmth filled the room, gentle, soft, unmistakably familiar. A light brushed against Anri's cheek. Mika's presence. Her voice echoed, calm, relieved, overflowing with gratitude. Greater than, thank you, for not choosing sacrifice. Kaito felt tears burn his eyes. Mika wasn't asking to return. She wasn't asking to be freed. She was thanking them, because someone was finally choosing memory over replacement. But the battle wasn't over. The curse wasn't gone, only cornered. And cornered things fight hardest. The basement door slammed shut. The lights shattered. A deafening screech tore through the school. The lens was coming back. And this time, it wasn't hunting victims. It was hunting memory. Chapter 9. The memory the curse couldn't erase. The screech tore through the basement like metal being ripped apart by invisible claws. The ground shook. Dust poured from the ceiling. The air itself felt as if it were being shredded. The lens was returning. Not glowing white anymore. Not glowing red. Pitch black. A void, a camera without reflection. Without light. Without purpose other than to devour. Because now it understood the greatest threat to its existence. Memory. Anri clutched her head. The memories of the forgotten students were no longer screaming, but they were overwhelming. Striking her all at once like thousands of voices begging to stay alive inside her mind. Kaito held her tighter. Stay with me. Focus on my voice. Anri gasped through pain. I'm trying, but there's so many, so many. Nishida shouted over the shaking ground. The curse is going after her because she's breaking its foundation. If she remembers them, it dies. Kaito's voice cracked. Then we protect her. A blast of air tore the basement door off its hinges, and the camera floated in. But not like before. It didn't scan. It didn't identify. It didn't record. It erased. Everything its lens passed over went dull. Trophies lost engravings. Papers lost ink. Photographs turned blank. It didn't need victims anymore. It needed to destroy memory itself. Anri screamed, a sound filled not with fear, but with the agony of memories being clawed out of her mind. Kaito threw himself in front of her, instinct, not logic. The black lens turned toward him, and a deep, static-filled whisper formed in the air. Greater than, you will forget. Kaito felt something slam into his mind, like a hand tearing pages out of a book. He clutched his skull, gasping. The curse was trying to rip Mika from him. Her laugh. Her voice. Her existence. His memories blurred, faded, slipping through his fingers like sand. No, no, he shouted, fighting to remember. He forced himself to picture her eyes. Her handwriting on notes she passed in class. The first time she teased him for being too serious. Her habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she got nervous. But the memories kept tearing, bleeding, unwinding. Anri, through her pain, screamed, Kaito, say her name, say her name. Kaito, panting, trembling, barely conscious, forced the sound out of his throat. Mika. The camera convulsed, violently. The name struck it like a sword. The black glow flickered. Kaito screamed her name again, raw, desperate, tearing his throat open. Mika. The basement exploded with a shockwave. The camera reeled backward, the black void inside its lens shattering into white cracks. As if the name alone was poison. Nishida gasped in disbelief. The curse cannot erase a memory someone chooses to keep. Suddenly, everything clicked. The curse had always fed on forgotten students because no one said their names. No one carried them, no one remembered. Anri pushed herself to her feet, trembling, barely able to speak. If the world won't remember them, then I will. The camera shrieked, terrified. Anri clutched her chest, the memories inside her flaring like burning stars. She began to speak, but not randomly, not screaming. She recited names. At first, one name. A voice of a girl forgotten in 2011. Then another. A boy erased in 2003. Then another. A senior erased in 1989. Each name spoken was like a bell tolling for the curse, a bell it could not silence. The camera launched forward to stop her, but Kaito and Nishida stood in front of her, blocking its path. Kaito roared through clenched teeth, she's not alone anymore. The camera blasted them both backward, but it had wasted time. Anri kept speaking. Name after name. Life after life. Story after story. Each memory she spoke repaired a face that had once been blurred. Their shapes became clear in her mind, and the curse screamed in torment. The walls shook. The light bulbs burst. The air smelled like burning wires. And then, the darkest memory of all surfaced. 1998. Shun and Aya. The two who had sacrificed themselves so that Araki could live. Anri's voice cracked from the weight of their pain, but she spoke their names anyway. Shun. Aya. The camera shrieked. The black lens tore apart from the pressure of names it could not erase. But Anri wasn't finished. Her voice broke into sobs as she whispered the last name. Mika. A final crack ripped through the camera, like a scream breaking through bone. And then, the lens burst. Shards of black glass flew in every direction, but instead of cutting, they dissolved into dust midair, into nothing. The camera fell to the floor. Dead. Anri collapsed to her knees, shaking with exhaustion. Kaito rushed to her, pulling her into his arms. She clung to him weakly, still whispering fragments of names, afraid to lose even one. "It's over," Kaito said, more to reassure himself than her. "It's really over." But Nishida stared at the broken camera, not relieved, not afraid, but stunned. "It's not dead," he whispered. Kaito froze. "What do you mean?" Nishida lifted a trembling finger toward the shattered lens on the floor. Inside, beneath the broken pieces, a new layer of glass glowed faintly. A new lens. A curse trying to resurrect itself. Nishida's voice trembled with both horror and awe. "It's evolving." Chapter 10. When memories learned to hurt. Time did not slow, it collapsed. Kaito and Anri sprinted up the stairs, clutching the stack of blurred photos they found in the archives. Nishida stumbled behind them, still half transformed between a living man and a fading ghost. The whole school trembled, lights flickering chaotically, all signaling one truth. The curse had evolved. It wasn't satisfied with names anymore. It wanted something greater. 7:14 p.m. Araki. Kaito gasped, pulling out his phone. She's the only one who still remembers Shun and Aya. She might be able to unlock the others. If Araki, the lone survivor of 1998, remembered the forgotten again, not just the two who sacrificed themselves, but all the erased students, then maybe the curse would collapse under the weight of memory. The phone rang. And rang. And rang. Finally, she answered, breathless, voice trembling. "Kaito, why now, after all these years?" Kaito didn't waste a second. "Do you remember their names, Shun and Aya?" Silence. Then, a sob. "How could I ever forget them?" Kaito felt hope surge through him, sharp as lightning. "Come to Seimei. We need you, now." "I'm already on my way." Kaito's breath caught. She had known this day would come. She had been waiting for it. 7:18 p.m. They reached the memorial room. The moment Kaito threw the door open, a blast of energy hit them, pure, suffocating fear and longing. The massive 1998 graduation photo glowed violently, students in it shaking like trapped souls pressed against glass. Mika stood in the center, still refusing to smile, refusing to obey. Her eyes locked with Kaito's. She wasn't begging to be saved. She was asking him to finish what she could not. Around the photo, shadows formed, the blurred spirits of decades of vanished students. They were closer to remembering than ever, but still incomplete. They didn't need bodies. They didn't need resurrection. They needed names. Nishida staggered to the center of the room, ramming his shoulder into the floating camera to stop it from activating, but the machine writhed like a living creature, fighting him. "Hurry," he shouted. "It can't hold back memories much longer." Kaito placed the stack of blurred photos before the glowing portrait. Every erased student stared outward, reaching, hungry for identity. Anri trembled, but stood tall. "It hurts," she whispered. "Every memory hurts." Kaito looked at her gently. "It hurts because they mattered." Then, the door burst open. Araki Nobu. 26 years of tears in her eyes. She didn't speak. She didn't hesitate. She walked straight toward the glowing portrait and laid her palm flat against the glass. Her voice cracked. "Shun, Aya?" The photograph rippled like water struck by stone. Then she screamed, not in fear, but conviction. "I remember you." The school shook. The shadows around the room stopped wailing and turned. They looked at Araki, like children recognizing their mother for the first time. Nishida sobbed. They're remembering who they were. But it wasn't enough. The other spirits, the ones from 2004, 2009, 2011, they trembled in pain. They had no one who remembered them. Memory cannot return from nothing, someone must choose to remember. Anri stepped forward, body shaking, but eyes full of fire. I'll do it. Kaito tried to stop her, but she placed her hand over his. I won't let anyone trade their life for another ever again. If carrying memories is the price, I'll pay it. Then she spoke names. One by one. Voices of boys and girls who had been stolen from the world. Each name cracked the glowing portrait, fractures of light across its surface. Each name reshaped a shadow, turning a blur into a face. Each name broke the curse further. But the curse wasn't done. It turned on Anri, not to erase her, but to replace her. Suddenly, the shadows closed in, pushing toward her, trying to force her into the empty space in the photo. Mika grabbed her hand from inside the portrait, holding her back, fighting with everything she had left. For the first time, Mika spoke, her voice echoing from inside the photo. Greater than, no one takes her place. 7:22 p.m. The building groaned, ceiling cracking. The camera thrashed violently, desperate to lock onto a pair before the curse collapsed. Kaito grabbed Anri, shielding her from the blast of energy. Nishida screamed through the chaos. The curse is trying to swap her in. It just needs one more replacement before it breaks. If Anri replaced Mika, the curse would stabilize and continue forever. And if no replacement was made, the curse would die. The camera's lens glowed, preparing to strike Anri. Kaito lunged in front of her. But the curse changed targets. It aimed at him instead. Because if Kaito was replaced, Anri would remember him, and she would break. Araki screamed, "Don't let it hit him." Nishida threw himself into the blast, shielding both Kaito and Anri. The blast consumed him, and his entire body flickered like static. "Nishida," Kaito shouted. Nishida forced a breath, a smile breaking through his pain. "It's okay, I'm not afraid anymore." The lens began to target Anri again. The curse was desperate. Mika held Anri's hand tighter, refusing to release her. Kaito roared, "I will remember all of them." The lights burst. The portrait shattered. Mika's voice, strong, gentle, infinite, echoed through the storm of memories. Greater than, no replacement. No sacrifice. Just memory. 7:29 p.m. The entire school trembled on the brink. Either collapse or rebirth. The curse was seconds away from choosing for them. Chapter 11. No one gets forgotten anymore. 7:29 p.m. 1 minute left. The memorial room no longer resembled a room. The walls had ruptured into a haze of fractured space, like reality itself had been torn open. Floorboards rippled like water. Desks and chairs floated weightlessly, as if gravity had surrendered. The graduation portrait glowed like a dying star. The curse was unraveling, or preparing for its final strike. Araki stood at the center, still calling the names of Shun and Aya. The more she spoke, the stronger her voice became, fueled by 26 years of regret and love. With every name she called, another cracked piece of the photo glowed and dissolved, releasing a trapped memory rather than erasing it. One by one, the forgotten stood again, not alive, not physical, but remembered. Shun, Aya, and countless others from different decades glimmered like silhouettes made of light. They didn't smile, they didn't beg, they simply existed, finally whole. But Mika was fighting harder than all of them. She wasn't fading or freeing herself, she was holding the entire curse back by sheer will. Her expression in the photo was fierce, teeth clenched, body shaking, as if she were shielding everyone from the breaking storm. Anri choked through tears. She's trying to protect us, even now. Kaito pressed tightly against her, holding her upright. She shouldn't have to do it alone anymore. The camera, the core of the curse, floated into the center of the room like a beating heart of darkness. The new lens was now exposed, pulsing violently. Faster than a heartbeat, faster than breath. It screeched, raw and furious. Greater than, two must replace. The entire room roared with the voice of the curse. Araki screamed back, "No one replaces anyone ever again." The curse fired a blast of red energy, the floor cracked open. The portrait buckled, but Araki didn't stop calling names. She stood like someone who had waited 2 decades to fight. Kaito and Anri held onto each other. But the curse wasn't after them now. It rushed toward Araki. Because she was the one breaking the cycle. Kaito pushed forward, but the wind force threw him back across the room. Araki looked at them one last time, not afraid. Not begging, but relieved. I've waited 26 years for this. She was ready to pay the price. But someone else reached her first. A figure burst out of the broken photograph, her hand glowing with fierce blue light. Mika. She seized Araki's shoulder and shoved her out of the blast path, taking the curse's full impact herself. Mika, Kaito screamed. Her body lit up like fire, not consumed but transformed, becoming the focal point of every memory, every trapped voice, every broken yearbook page. For the first time in 26 years, Mika's mouth opened. And she spoke into the world. Greater than, no one gets to sacrifice anymore. The light blasting from her wasn't destruction. It was memory. The curse recoiled violently, lens cracking deeper as Mika forced fragments of her own story into it, not as a victim. Not as an erased face, but as a person who lived. Her dreams. Her laughter. Her friendships. Her fears. Her love. Anri and Kaito watched through tears. Mika wasn't pushing anyone into the curse. She was pushing herself out. The lens shrieked. Mika's memories poisoned it like truth burning through a lie. The curse twisted, desperate, trying to revise the story, trying to override identity. Mika pressed her forehead to the camera, pure defiance blazing in her eyes. Greater than, I exist. The lens shattered, not from impact, but from recognition. It finally saw her. Not as a victim. Not as a replacement. But as someone who lived, and would never be erased again. The shards rained like stardust across the room. Kaito reached out with both hands, but Mika was already fading into the light. Not being pulled away. Not being erased. Being freed. Her voice, soft and steady, echoed through the collapsing room. Greater than, live well, even if remembering hurts. Kaito screamed her name, once. Twice, voice broken. But this time, Mika didn't disappear because she was forgotten. She disappeared because she was finally remembered. 7:30 p.m. The room fell completely silent. The portrait dissolved into particles of light. The camera burned out. The storm of memories settled. Everything was still. Anri collapsed into Kaito's arms, sobbing uncontrollably, not from loss, but from the unbearable weight of love and memory. Nishida slid to the floor, crying with relief, his body no longer flickering. He was fully human again. Araki dropped to her knees, whispering, thank you, thank you. And Kaito, trembling, held Anri as tightly as if the world might disappear if he let go. The curse had broken. But one truth settled painfully into Kaito's heart. The price of remembering is living with the pain of memory. And the price of forgetting is losing everything that matters. Kaito chose the first. And it saved them. Chapter 12. The Curse That Cracked. When the blinding light faded, the world didn't return all at once, it reassembled slowly. Like someone stitching reality back together. Kaito blinked. The floor of the memorial room was under him again. But it didn't feel solid. The air shimmered, tables floated weightlessly, and walls bent like reflections rippling in water. They were between realities, suspended in the moment where the curse had either died or refused to die. Anri was trembling beside him, faint but conscious. Nishida leaned against the shattered podium, breath ragged but alive, not fading, not ghost-like anymore. Kaito looked around, afraid of what he might not see. And then he found her. Mika. Not trapped behind glass. Not part of a photograph. Not fading into the curse. She stood on the floor of the room, for the first and last time. Her body was made of thin light, like a silhouette against the sunrise. Not physical, but real. She stared at Kaito and Anri, and there was no pain in her expression anymore. Only peace. Anri tried to move toward her. But Mika raised her hand gently, not to push her away, but to ask for silence. You kept your promise, she whispered. Her voice was soft and warm, the way it used to be before the curse. Kaito's throat tightened so hard he couldn't respond. Mika glanced back at the shattered camera, the black lens split open and melting into dust. It wasn't enough to kill the curse, she said. Memories alone couldn't do it. Someone had to choose memory over sacrifice. She looked at Anri with eyes full of gratitude and sorrow. You didn't save me by dying for me. You saved me by letting me live in your memory. Anri's tears ran silently. She didn't reach out. She didn't beg Mika to stay. She understood. And that was what broke Kaito. His breath shook violently as he forced out words. I should have saved you sooner. Mika smiled, the same small smile she used to give when she teased him for worrying too much. You did save me. Reality flickered, the room starting to stabilize. The curse was losing grip. And with it, Mika's spirit. Her outline frayed at the edges like threads loosening. Nishida choked out. You can stay. You don't have to go. You're free now. Mika shook her head gently. Freedom isn't staying forever. Freedom is leaving when it's time. Kaito stepped forward, and this time Mika didn't stop him. She brushed her fingers across his cheek, light passing through skin. Warm but weightless. Pain doesn't mean you failed, she whispered. Pain means you loved. Kaito's tears fell. Mika stepped back, not forced. Not dragged, only moving forward. As she dissolved into the air, she left only her voice. Greater than, don't let memory be your prison. Let it be your reason to live. The last of her light faded. And this time, she didn't vanish in terror. She didn't vanish in silence. She vanished remembered. The room settled. The desks fell gently to the floor. Gravity returned. The light steadied. The curse, the cycle, the nightmare, was over. But the world did not celebrate. There was no applause. No miracle announcement. Just 4 people crying quietly in a room full of memories. Anri leaned into Kaito, exhausted, voice fragile. Do you think she's happy now? Kaito closed his eyes, not to hide the tears, but to hold the memory of her last smile. I think she is. Nishida wiped his eyes with shaking hands. And so should you. The curse is gone. You don't owe it anything anymore. But beneath that relief was a quiet truth no one could ignore. Survival didn't erase pain. It only gave them the chance to live with it. Kaito looked at Anri, at her eyes. Older than they should be. Holding the lives of so many. The world was safe, but safety had a cost. A cost that did not disappear just because the curse did. And now, there was no curse left to blame. Only memory. Only life. Only the choice to keep going. Chapter 13. Memories don't disappear by themselves. The next morning, Seimei High looked exactly the way it always did. Students chatted loudly at the school gates. Some complained about homework, others laughed about inside jokes, and a few took selfies for their SNS profiles. It was ordinary, comfortingly ordinary. Too ordinary. Kaito walked through the entrance hall and felt his blood run cold. No one mentioned the storm that tore the memorial room apart. No one mentioned the camera. No one mentioned the disappearance, or return, of anyone. To the rest of the school, nothing had ever happened. And that was the cruelest proof that the curse was gone. Because curses leave scars. But life does not pause for them. Kaito entered Class 12C. The desks were in their usual places. The chalkboard was covered in normal reminders about quizzes and club events. The sunlight fell across the floor the same way it did every morning. But Kaito saw only one thing. The seat where Mika once sat. Now it was just an ordinary chair. No one stared at it. No one felt a void. No one remembered. Kaito inhaled sharply. Mika didn't come back, but she wasn't erased. She lived only in the memories of those who chose to keep her. And that was enough. He sat down. Anri entered seconds later. She greeted a few classmates with a tired but sincere smile, then took her seat. Kaito watched her. Not because he feared she'd vanish, but because he worried the memories inside her might swallow her from the inside. At first glance, she looked like her usual self. But Kaito saw the difference, subtle. invisible to others. Her eyes held too many lifetimes. Later, during break, Kaito found her alone on the rooftop, staring at the cloudy sky as if searching for something beyond it. He sat beside her quietly. "You're thinking about them?" he asked softly. Anri nodded. "They're calmer today. The memories aren't screaming anymore." "That's good," Kaito said. But she continued. "They're not fading either." That was the part that hurt. Anri placed her hand over her chest. "It's strange. Every memory feels like it belongs to me, even though I know it doesn't." "Does it feel wrong?" Kaito asked. After a long pause, Anri shook her head. "No, it feels right. It hurts, but it feels right." Kaito felt both relief and sorrow. He noticed something else, something no one else would ever see. In the reflection of the rooftop door's glass, Anri's uniform didn't reflect. Her face did. Her body did. Her hair did. But not her uniform. Kaito's heart squeezed. The memories she carried were affecting her existence, weaving her into something not entirely rooted in the present. But he said nothing. Not yet. Their silence wasn't awkward. It was the silence of two people who didn't need to pretend. Eventually, Anri asked, "Kaito, do you think we won?" He took a long time to answer, not because he didn't know, but because the truth deserved sincerity. "We didn't defeat anything," he said quietly. "We didn't erase the past. We didn't fix the pain. We didn't bring anyone back." He turned to face her. "We just made sure no one else has to suffer the same way again." Anri closed her eyes and breathed out, like she'd been holding that breath for years instead of days. "That's enough for me." They stayed there until the warning bell rang. As they stood to leave, Anri suddenly staggered, as if dizzy. Kaito grabbed her. "Are you okay?" Anri nodded quickly, too quickly. "Yeah, just lost balance for a second. I'm fine." But she wasn't. Not because she was weak, but because too many memories were settling inside her at once. And Kaito understood something quietly, painfully, without needing to ask. The curse didn't take Anri. But the memories did. Not to erase her. Not to trap her. But to anchor themselves in someone who refused to forget. As they headed toward the stairwell, Anri whispered, almost involuntarily, "From now on, I'll remember for all of them." Kaito stopped walking. Not because he was afraid, but because he recognized the expression on her face. She wasn't crushed by the weight. She wasn't drowning. She was carrying it. Because she wanted every lost life to matter. Kaito spoke with a voice that trembled from honesty. "You don't have to carry it alone." Anri smiled, small, tired, grateful. "I know, and that makes it bearable." She continued walking. Kaito stayed frozen for a moment, whispering to himself, "No matter how heavy memory becomes, I won't let it take her away." And somewhere deep inside him, in a place he could not reach yet, a fear took root. The curse had vanished. But the burden it left behind had not. And only time would reveal whether memory healed or consumed. Chapter 14. The Keeper of Memories. From the outside, Anri looked exactly the same. She went to class, answered questions, chatted with friends, and laughed at jokes. No one suspected that anything extraordinary lived inside her. But Kaito saw it. He noticed the shift in her expression too subtle for anyone else to catch. The moment she heard someone mention a certain song, or a certain part of the school, or a certain memory, her eyes would lose focus for a second, as if her mind was pulled into a past she never lived. Because she wasn't only remembering her own memories anymore. She was remembering everyone who had ever been stolen by the curse. During literature class, the teacher shared a funny anecdote. The entire class burst into laughter, except Anri. She smiled politely, but her eyes betrayed a depth of exhaustion, as if she was carrying decades of emotion in a 17-year-old body. During gym class, she sat on the bench after twisting her ankle, while others chattered loudly on the field. She stared at the court with a faint smile, a nostalgic one. Kaito sat beside her. "What are you thinking about?" Anri didn't answer immediately. Then, softly, "I'm remembering someone who loved volleyball, a girl from 2004. She used to laugh the loudest in this gym." Kaito swallowed. "You don't know her." "I do now." she whispered. And that was the problem. After school, Kaito found her standing alone in front of the locked memorial room. The sunlight through the windows framed her like a scene that shouldn't exist. "You came here again," Kaito said gently. Anri nodded. "I don't want to forget this place." "It almost killed you," Kaito reminded her. Anri smiled, not in dismissal, but in acceptance. "It also saved me, because this is where Mika held on, and where so many people waited to be remembered." Kaito walked closer, hands shaking slightly. "If something's wrong, you have to promise you'll tell me." Anri nodded sincerely. "I will, but you have to promise me something too." "What?" "That you won't live your whole life just remembering me." The sentence struck Kaito like a knife, because he had heard it once before. From Mika, in the final moments before she faded. Kaito's voice broke. "I don't regret remembering Mika. And I won't regret remembering you. Memory isn't a weight, it's the proof that someone mattered." Anri stared at him with glimmering eyes full of gratitude and sorrow at the same time. "Then I'm not afraid anymore," she whispered. Later that day, they sat together on the rooftop. Beneath a sky drenched in sunset. The city was loud below them. Life was moving on. Anri hugged her knees and spoke softly. "I'm not afraid of the memories. I'm afraid of forgetting who I am among them." Kaito froze, because that was the fear he had been hiding from. He turned to her. "I won't let that happen. If you ever lose yourself, I'll remind you who you are." Anri leaned her head on his shoulder, gentle, tired, content. "You always say the right thing, Kaito." But when the wind blew across the rooftop, Kaito saw something that made his breath stop. In the glass reflection of the rooftop door, Anri's face reflected perfectly. Her hair reflected perfectly. Her body reflected perfectly. But her uniform didn't reflect at all. A sign, faint but undeniable, that she was no longer completely rooted in the physical world. Not fading like the cursed victims. Not erased. But standing between worlds, because she carried memories strong enough to bind her to both. Kaito didn't speak of it. The sun set fully, and the first stars blinked above them. After a long silence, Anri whispered, "Today, when I sat in my desk, I remembered someone from 2011, a girl who always hummed music during exams because it calmed her down. I don't know her name yet, but I feel like she wants me to." Kaito tightened his hands around hers. "You don't have to rush." Anri smiled. "I'm not rushing, I'm just listening." She stood up as the evening bell rang and stretched, looking tired but unbroken. "Let's go home," she said cheerfully. And she walked a few steps ahead. Kaito stayed where he was, still staring at her reflection in the door. Still realizing what no one else could see. The curse was gone. But the burden of memory remained. Not a threat. Not a punishment. A responsibility, one that only Anri could carry. And Kaito whispered under his breath, not out of fear, but out of devotion. "I'll stay by your side, no matter how heavy remembering becomes." Only time would reveal whether memory healed or consumed. But they would face it together. Not as sacrifice. Not as replacement. As two people who chose to remember. Chapter 15. Memory never dies, final. Spring arrived quietly. Cherry blossoms fluttered across Seimei High, settling on windowsills and sneaker soles. Students took pictures, laughed under the blooming trees, and whispered about entrance exams and future dreams. The world had moved on. Kaito and Anri walked through the courtyard together every morning. They looked like two ordinary students, talking about homework, clubs, and weekend plans. And yet nothing about them was ordinary. One afternoon, after school, they visited the riverbank, the place where students often took graduation photos every year. The breeze carried the smell of spring grass. The water glimmered, gently reflecting the sky. Anri watched the river quietly. "I can hear them today," she said softly. Kaito nodded, not afraid. "What are they saying?" "They're remembering who they were," she answered with a warm smile. For so long, their memories were trapped in pain. But now, they're remembering the good parts too. Their dreams, their friendships, their childhoods. Kaito sat beside her on the concrete slope. "And you're holding all of that?" Anri placed a hand over her heart. "No, I'm sharing all of that. She tilted her head, listening to something only she could hear. They're not screaming anymore. They're humming, like a choir, soft, gentle, full of life. Kaito let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for months. For the first time since the night of the curse, Anri looked truly calm. A small group of first-year students passed by, laughing and pushing each other. One of them recognized Anri and waved enthusiastically. She waved back, smiling warmly. To them, she was just an upperclassman they liked. They had no idea she carried the weight of generations. After the students left, Kaito spoke again. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if the curse never existed? Anri closed her eyes for a moment and thought deeply. Then she answered, if the curse never existed, Mika would still be here. Kaito's heart tightened. And Shun, and Aya, and so many others would still be alive. She paused. But then no one would ever know how strong they were, how much they loved, how hard they fought to stay alive in someone's memory. Anri looked toward the sky, eyes shining. They deserved to be remembered. And now they are. Kaito reached for her hand. And what about you? Anri blinked. What about me? Who will remember you? He whispered. When the memories inside you become too many. When you start losing yourself among them. She laughed softly, not dismissive, but full of trust. You will. The wind picked up. Cherry blossoms scattered across the river like tiny pink lanterns floating toward the sea. Kaito leaned back on his hands and looked at her with a quiet devotion he didn't need to say out loud. After a while, Anri spoke again. Kaito, if one day I start to fade, not because of a curse, but because I can't distinguish my memories from theirs. He swallowed hard. I want you to remind me of who I am, she continued, not who they were. Kaito nodded slowly, a pact without ceremony. Heavy and sacred. I will, no matter what. She smiled, peaceful, hopeful, real. With that, I won't be afraid of remembering anymore. The sun dipped lower, turning the river golden. Anri stood up, brushing dust from her skirt. Graduation's coming soon. We should take pictures with everyone. Kaito chuckled. You hate taking pictures. Maybe, she said, but memories don't exist if we don't make them. Before they walked back, Anri looked at the cherry blossoms one more time, long enough that Kaito wondered what she was seeing. Not the present. Not the past. Something in between. And then she turned to him, smiling gently. Let's go home. Kaito walked beside her. As they crossed the school gates, the bell chimed in the courtyard, a sound that had rung for decades. Somewhere, in a space beyond the physical world, voices echoed softly, full of warmth. Thank you. We are not forgotten anymore. Anri heard them. But for once, she didn't stop walking. Because she finally understood. Remembering didn't mean living in the past. Remembering meant carrying someone forward with you. The cherry blossoms fell behind them. The gate closed. Life continued. The curse was gone forever. But memory lived on. And memory never dies. The curse has been erased. And Seimei High is no longer haunted. But the memories it once devoured still live on, carried by Anri, by Kaito, and by anyone who chooses to remember rather than forget. No one vanished. No one was replaced. Because memory is the proof that a person once existed. The story does not end with running from the past, but with the courage to look back and carry it forward.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.